Hi, I'm Mick and I am an alcoholic. Welcome to the Canarian International Group of Alcoholics Anonymous. Let's have Hannah read the preamble.
Thank you, Mick. Evening, everyone. My name is Hannah. I'm an alcoholic. Alcoholics Anonymous is a fellowship of men and women who share their experience, strength, and hope with each other that they may solve their common problem and help others to recover from alcoholism. The only requirement for membership is an honest desire to stop drinking. AA has no dues or fees. It is not aligned with any sect, denomination, politics, organisation, or institution. It does not wish to engage in any controversy, neither endorses nor opposes any causes. Our primary purpose is to stay sober and help other alcoholics to achieve sobriety. Thanks, Mick.
Thank you, Hannah, very much. A very warm welcome goes out to any newcomers or anyone returning to Alcoholics Anonymous. Carol volunteered to read the speaker's choice. Over to you.
Hello. Thank you, Mick. Thank you, everybody. My name's Carol and I am an alcoholic. This is the responsibility statement. I am responsible when anyone, anywhere reaches out to help. I want the hand of AA always to be there, and for that, I am responsible. Thank you.
Thank you, Carol. And now we'll go over to Tony W. to share for about 40 minutes, Tony.
Okay. Hi, I'm Tony. I'm an alcoholic. Can you hear me? Yes, good. Well, thank you very much for inviting me tonight. And I want to say two things straight from the beginning. One is I speak for myself. I don't speak for AA as a body as a whole. I just speak of my experience and my thanks for this fellowship. And it certainly saved my life and changed my life. And the other thing I would like to do, straight off, in case I forget, is just to say thank you to Mossy, to Mick, and to Chris W., all people around the world who've made this Zoom work. And you've done a fantastic job because, you know, we had COVID, we had lockdown, and we were in a mess. And you've worked hard, you've kept it going, and I think it's a big step change in AA. And I know we've got lots of people complaining, bleeding deacons and all that, but I think it's a wonderful thing. It's here forever, and you've done a great job. So I just want to say that right at the beginning. As I say, I'm Tony. I'm an alcoholic, and just to tell you a bit about my childhood, I grew up in a family who had been very badly damaged by the war, and my father and mother had been in Coventry, which, as you all know, got bombed very badly in the war. And I just do touch that, right? And they really struggled. And then once the war was over, the work stopped. Instead of the war effort, there was just no work, and they had to get somewhere to live for their family, my older brothers and sister, and they came back to Newcastle and back to the mines. And it's something my father didn't want, but he tried his best to keep the family together, and that's how we all started off. And I was the second youngest of a family of 6, and so I remember as a young lad growing up, you know, with bigger brothers and dad and an uncle. It was very volatile because the war had damaged them all quite badly. And first thing I really noticed was that there'd be fights in the house on a regular basis, and often a doctor would be called to stitch somebody up one way or another in the house. And and I witnessed that, and I was always told the next morning, don't talk about this at school, don't tell anybody. What happens here stays here. And that's really where it was. It was a house of secrets. And I grew up with this, and from a very early age, I realized I had to get out the house, because it wasn't, caring mum and dad. They weren't bad. I'm not blaming them, but people just didn't do that with children. Not to be seen. And I went out and I did lots of things. And I joined a church and I did very well in there. Choir boy, boy altar, all of that. And I felt very happy in there because there was nobody really, violent and, behaving badly. And I felt very comfortable. And to be honest with you, when I got to 15, I honestly thought that, I might become a vicar, a priest, because I liked that environment. And that's what I knew well. That's where I felt safe. But something happened when I was 15. I'd left school and the lads in my class had come up to the dance, Tony. You never go out, you never go, this was the early 60s. And anyway, cut long story short, I went. But before I went to the dance, they said, let's get a drink, let's buy a drink. And I bought a bottle of Newcastle Brown Ale and a bottle of Amber Ale for me, and I drank them on the bank of Bowden Colliery. I remember the night, I remember the picture of me drinking for the rest of my life. It was fantastic. I felt it was the elixir of life. I drank these 2 bottles and I felt a completely different man. I was never, frightened anymore, if you like. And I just thought, right, this is great. And that started my drinking. And within 3 weeks, I'd packed in the church almost, and I'd packed in all of the choir and everything, and I stopped piano lessons, everything, because my life changed, because I was happy. And I found, because I was quite tall and broad, I could get into pubs very easily. Now, I've always been quite an industrial sort of lad, and I had 3 or 4 jobs, part-time jobs, so I had money. So I could go to the pub 2 or 3 nights a week quite easily and drink. And I loved it. And I loved the life. I loved playing dominoes with the old man and all that. It was great. And that's the way my life went from then on. And I was quite a good footballer, but I'm afraid booze and girls got in the way. And I thought they were better. So I didn't go on with the football, even though I did get a trial at one stage. And my drinking was my best friend. It really gave me the courage. I never felt lonely. I just love drink. I love going out. I love the social, the pubs, different types of pubs. And it kept me away from the madhouse. And I got to 19 and I was still playing amateur football. And I remember I came home one night, it had been a big match and I was very tired. And I fell asleep eating my dinner at home. And my dad laid into me because he was very fond of knocking his kids about. And I turned on him, and I'll be honest, I got him in the corner and I battered him a bit. And I left home that night. I left home at 19 because I couldn't stand any more of this shite. And I lived in Gateshead Park for 2 nights until I managed to find some digs. Now, on apprentice money, I couldn't afford the Hilton. And where I lived was really, it was binmen, it was people out of prison, people out of mental institutions, and it was a really tough house. And I only lived there a few weeks, but twice we got raided by the police looking for somebody and pulled out of bed in the middle of the night. But that's where I went. I wanted that more than I wanted to be in this crazy house with these crazy people. So this went on till 1969, and I left the Northeast and I came to London. One thing I did do in all that time, I carried on with my studies in engineering. I never let that affect me because I knew that was my meal ticket for a future. So I came to London in 1969 and fantastic, 60s. It was a marvelous time. And I met my wife in the Hammersmith Pally because that was a fantastic place to go after a belly full of beer and then, dancing and locking about. And I did enjoy my life then. And cut long story short, we decided to get married. And again, work-wise, I was doing very well. I applied to the best job in London, which I was told you can't get in there. It's impossible. Good family and everything else. But I was quite well qualified, and I applied and I got straight in. And I was really pleased because it was a very good job. And again, everything was going fine. And but my drinking started to take another shape. I worked for a brewery, Guinness, and the beer was free at work. So when my wife moaned, I could say, how am I? I'm getting paid. I've been to work, and of course I could drink free, and I enjoyed that job. And I continued with my studies, and 'cause I wanted to be a proper qualified engineer, and that's the way it was. And we didn't have children immediately, and we had to work hard for our new house and everything else, but we did that. But an opportunity came along. There'd been a big accident in Africa, and they really needed somebody who was a qualified engineer, but also somebody who could do something. They had enough expatriates who la-di-da and all that, but they needed somebody who could get amongst the locals, because they had lost confidence in their jobs, their work, and definitely in the people who run this brewery. So they asked me if I would go, and I said yes, and my wife accepted she would come. And they spent a lot of money on. They taught me to speak French, sent me to Blitz and all sorts of things. And I went out to Africa, and I was told it was a little Paris in Africa, Douala, and it wasn't. They didn't tell me the truth, and it was a quite tough place. But the thing was, I got on very well. I got stuck in. But the thing was, I was around beer all day long, and I could drink. And I was doing a good job. It was a functional drunk, and everything seemed to be okay. But things started to go worse. Things happened. I got involved in a few things I shouldn't have got involved with when I was drunk, and then of course my wife fell for a baby, and the company made it quite clear we don't want her to have the baby in Africa. She's got to go home. When she's 5-6 months pregnant, and I'm going back to the early 70s now. And so I was left on my own. So I saw my wife off at Douala Airport, and I was glad to see her going back to safety. But I thought, champion, I can drink now in peace. I won't be told off every night. I'm doing the job. I'm earning a lot of money, and I can drink in peace. Well, my drinking in peace was horrendous. And I had a boss who was an Oxford Blue, and he was all frightfully awful and all this. And he didn't. I did a very good job. For 2 days, I had to repair some buzz bars where a snake had got across, and it exploded the substation. And I worked 2 days and 2 nights to get all this taken to bits and put together. And he had the audacity in the morning that he came in from his sleepy bed and said, "You've done a wonderful job, but could you just stop drinking so much?" Because I was still drinking in the morning. I mean, I hadn't been to bed for 2 days, and I was really pissed off with that. I thought, this snotty nosed little twerps, never done a proper day's work. Anyway, he was right, and I carried on the way I was, and I was wild. And I got barred from bars in Douala where white men weren't supposed to. I was told quite clearly, you don't go in that part of town. But often there was a lot of fun in that part of town, and I used to go, but they couldn't cope when I was drunk and falling about, and they barred me, and that's how bad it was, really. And I collapsed. I was at work, and I just collapsed, and I was taken to Douala Hospital, or the private part of it, and I had a French doctor. And he said in his best English, "Monsieur, your liver is very tired." And it was because of the drink. I mean, I was drinking all day long. I had a steward back in my house, and he thought it was Christmas because he was eating all of my food, because all I wanted was drink. And I knew it was in a bad way. And my wife had her baby in England, our daughter. And I thought, oh, blow this. They're not very friendly sort of people, and I resigned, which they accepted. They didn't want to, but they did, because they could see this young engineer who had come out with a very good track record, great at his job, but God, does he drink. And they accepted it because they could see me dying in Africa. They could see me dying, and that would have been no credit to any of them. So I came back to England. But the condition was, if I was leaving the company, that if I went back, I had to leave the company. There'd be no job for me back in England, part role. and they were choked because they were so pleased with my work. They'd already worked out my next post was going to be Ben in and to go there as chief. But the thing was, they couldn't cope with Mr. Hyde when I was drunk. It scared them, and lots of people in Douala knew me for the worst reasons, because I'd go out on a Saturday night and I'd create havoc. I thought I was having a great time, but I wasn't. I was just a drunk, out of control. So I came back to England and I got cracking straight away. Saw my new baby and you know, my wife and all of that, and that was lovely. And I got cracking for a job, and it was better times. I got the offer of 3 jobs, and I accepted this job at an American company, and they were very keen to take me on. So I joined them, and it was one of those jobs where it was a big job, and I hadn't really thought it through, but anyway, I took it on. And classic alcoholic behavior, which I've learned later in here, I behaved perfectly for 3 months. I went there, the new job, they thought I was wonderful. And then one night, and I'd promised my wife I'd stop me drinking. And Friday night after 3 months, I came home and I stopped at a pub and I bought a big tin of Watney 4, it was called. It was shit, but it was beer. And I fetched it home. But what I did was, there'd been a change in my drinking. And I bought a half a bottle of vodka, a quarter bottle of vodka, which I kept undercover. And I would go into my wife and she'd be sad to see the beer. And I says, come on, have a shandy, pet. You know, it's the weekend, you know, and I'm doing well. So I would have that. She'd have a shandy, I'd have a beer, and I was off. Because once the smell was on my breath, I didn't have to worry. Vodka would do the rest. And that's how I drank for a while. But I had a problem because I was doing well in this plant. And one night I came home, the same ritual, party 4, bottle of vodka, hidden behind the chair, settee in the room, drank the beer. And I must have been tired that night and I fell asleep. I went to bed. And the next morning, my wife's doing a normal hoover in the whole house again. And she found the bottle. And she says, what's this? I says, oh, that was for you, pet, because I know you like vodka and lime. Which it wasn't. It was my drink. It was my, it was for me to have. But there were, that's the way things went. And things carried on. And I kept on drinking, but I kept it under control. But I always knew now, no, I didn't make a decision, but I always knew going out with friends for a pint of beer, 2 pints if you're lucky, no good. And I had to have my vodka, and I'd go to the toilet and say, I'm just going to the toilet, and I would go and have my drinks in the toilet out of my vodka. And that went on for a while. And as I say, at work, I did very, very well. And I came from starting as a electrical engineer there, and within a year, I was running the plant. And I didn't want the job, but the Americans insisted. You know, they've seen the clean Tony. They've seen the one who could do a good job. And I was given this plant, and I'm still in my middle 20s. I mean, I'm not very old. And it was one of those jobs where I realized I don't really like working here that much. And if I screw up and they sack me, it's not the end of the world. You know what I mean? I've been sacked from better jobs. But I did it, and I did very, very well. And I'm only sharing that with you because the chief engineer was a bloke called Chuck Strand from America, and he's a wonderful man, hard as nails. But he was desperate to try and get this plant running properly. It was in desperate state. And the reason was because it had been bombed, you know, it was Firestones, and they'd been building things for the war effort, and it had been bombed during the war, and nobody had spent money repairing everything, and everything was bodged and real mess. And I was the first person you'd ever known who wanted to try and put things right. And but after a while, I felt confident, and I started to drink more. And there was a project that my boss asked me, he said, can you go up to GEC? So we have a problem for shutdown. We had ordered a new mill line and motor and gearbox, all the stuff. And it was going badly wrong. And the blokes in charge of it really didn't know what they were doing. So he sent me up to go and sort it out, and it was a really tough meeting. And we're there for hours arguing, and eventually, when we're talking about lawyers and all the rest of it and what you've committed to, they agreed they would meet the deadline, because we used to shut the factory down. So we only had a 2-week window to do all this work. And I remember driving back to Leeds Bradford Airport, and the driver said, "Your plane has just taken off, sir." And I thought, champion, I can have a drink now. How I'm entitled to it. Worked very hard. And I went into the airport, and Jesus Christ, the bars aren't open. I mean, I know it was a small air place and not like Heathrow or Gatwick, and I thought, you're having a laugh. Anyway, it finally opened, and I started to drink. And I drank at the airport, I drank on the plane, I drank at Heathrow. And I remember I wasn't sure where Amersham was, where I bought this house after Africa. And I stopped at quite a few pubs just to get directions. And of course, by the time the police stopped me, I was well gone. And I knew I didn't mustn't blown to bags or any of that. So they arrested me and took me to the police station. And I don't remember much, because the beer really and the scotch really had kicked in, and I was knackered. And they had a doctor there, and I wouldn't give him anything. And they had there's quite a few police around asking me questions. I was really ignoring them. And I wouldn't give in, and they told me, "Well, we'll run you home. We'll run you home to your house. And as you can't have your car." And I said, "All right, okay." And oh no, that's right, I didn't do that. I said, "No, I'll have a taxi." And I remember they insisted I paid these taxi drivers at 2-3 in the morning, and there was one car with 2 blokes in it, and they were real jack the lads, and I paid them. The police witnessed me playing them, and I'm in the shit because I had to be somewhere else the next morning. So what I did was I was sitting in the back of this car, and these blokes are saying to me, "What the pigs got you for?" Blah blah blah, and all of this, and I was ignoring them. I got to about a mile of my house, and they decided they wanted more money, and they said, "This is further than you told the police." I said, "No, it's not." So I got out of my car, and as I got out the back seat of the car to walk home, they grabbed my coat, and they wanted more money, and they ripped the coat right up the back, completely wrecked the suit. And I don't know what happened after that. All I remember was I was kicking one of their heads under the number plate at the front of the car, and the other bloke I was battering on the bonnet. And it's not because I'm a tough, hard man. I was crazy with drink, and I was in trouble. And I left them there, and I walked off. And I walked into my house, and my wife opened the door, and she cried, she screamed, because I was covered in blood and a hell of a mess. I'd left in the morning with my best suit on, my briefcase, going to a business meeting through flying to Bradford, Leeds with a top company, and I come back like a tramp. I'd lost my cake, lost everything. And my wife started to clean me up in the bathroom, and she said, "God, what's happened? There's no marks, you're not cut." And I said, "No, I know." But when this is all going on, 3 o'clock in the morning, the police came, because the 2 blokes had gone back to the police and said I beat them up, and they wanted a further statement. And so they did the job well and truly, and let all my neighbours know. Now, I'm only sharing that war stories because I'm just telling you what it was like. And I got into AA, and well, what happened was, a little while after I got into AA, because what happened was I thought my wife was going to sewing lessons at Amersham College, but she wasn't. She was going to Al-Anon, and I didn't know. But I knew Thursday nights was the night I could be in my house in peace, and I could have a drink if I needed. And but I didn't realize she'd been going to Al-Anon. And it came to a head one Friday night. I'd come home after a week's work, the old routine, beer, vodka. She went upstairs to have a bath. So I thought, well, that's convenient. I'll have a drink now and I'll bath later. And of course, I was drunk. and I collapsed on the floor in the kitchen. She had to call for help, and my neighbours came in. I knew nothing. I was passed out, and basically she picked up my daughter. She got in the motor car and she ran away. She had had enough. She couldn't stand it anymore, and she did. She ran off and went to her mum and dad's, and then, but they thought I was wonderful. You know, I made a lot of money. She had a big house. She had a life of her own with no, you know, no money problems. And so she went to my brother, and she's a bit like a nomad. She didn't want to go home because although I didn't knock her around, I was a Jekyll and Hyde. And when Mr. Hyde was in business, good night, Diana. So this went on for 2 weeks, and I didn't get too excited. And I thought, you know, where is she? Anyway, my brother rang and he said, oh, she's with us. And I said, oh, right. I says, when's she coming back? And she said, I'm not coming back unless you go to AA. I says, what? I says, what am I going to go there for? And she said, because you're an alcoholic. She says, you're a wonderful man, but you're a drunk, you know. So I thought, that's pushing the boat a bit, you know, but okay. I heard what she said, and I said, I'll go, but I don't know where the meetings are. She said, there's one in Amersham on a Thursday night. And I went, I couldn't go in a car because I had a car, but I was banned from driving. Her Majesty didn't like me drinking and driving and banned me. So I had to go on a push bike. And I thought, I've got a real problem here, because when I got to Amersham, where am I going to put the bike? Outside with all these alkies. They're bound to nick it, sell it for a pint. And, you know, and I thought, this is hopeless. Anyway, I came home from work and I had my briefcase, and I went into the meeting. I looked at this lot and I thought, this is a swingers club. They're all kissing and cuddling and pouncing about. And I went and sat at the back of the room with my briefcase, my mobile bar, which was my briefcase. I sat at the back of the room and I put it between my legs. I thought, don't let these alkies know what's in there. They'll probably cut me throat. And I listened to the meeting. And I'll be honest with you, the chap who shared for quite a while, like I am now, identified with him, and he made a lot of sense. And but that was it. I listened, didn't say anything. When they said the meeting's over, I thought, zippy, I'm off. I'm out the door. But they didn't let me escape. All these huggers and kisses all come up to me, and newcomer and all that. And I said, oh, well, nice to see you. I've had my meeting, and I can't come to any more because I haven't got a car. I can't drive. We'll take you to meetings. Oh, Christ. And this is how it went on. They wouldn't let me escape. And I mean, some of you remember Ricky Ann, but Ricky Ann was 5 years sober then. And, you know, and she was lovely, you know, young and lovely. And I thought, how can she be 5 years sober? I didn't believe it. But anyway, cut long story short, they said, we'll take you to meetings. And I'd like to say to you, I went to the meetings and I went, hallelujah, I've arrived. This is the place. It wasn't like that. And for the first 18 months, it wasn't easy. And every time I went abroad in business, you weren't there, my wife wasn't there, my sponsor wasn't, nobody was there. And I could have a drink on my own and nobody would know. And in those 18 months, it got worse and worse and worse. And it came to a head when I was actually on holiday for a few days with my wife and my daughter, and I fell down a marble staircase and smashed my head wide open. And I'm laying on a bed, and this doctor's stitching me up without any injections. And my wife said, aren't you going to give him an injection? And he said, I cannot. I don't know how much he's drunk. He's drunk a lot, and I don't want to kill him. So they did a cold turkey, and I remember the blood pouring down into my eye, and I could see my wife crying and my daughter as well in the corner. And I thought, I've got to stop drinking. This has got to be the end. Well, I've come back, be long story short, I came back to England and I got cracking. I stopped pouncing around. I went to the meetings and I listened. I didn't talk too much, but I listened. And people started to really help me. And, you know, I couldn't understand what their angle was, you know, because what did they want? I mean, they're doing all this, running me around, taking the meetings and helping me about higher powers and gods and all that. And one of the most wonderful people I ever knew was Big Pat, and Mick knows him. And I had been on my Christmas work still, and I was head of department, and my mum were having a drink at work, and I thought, well, I've got to have a drink with them, and I can't not have a drink with my men at Christmas. And of course, I drank, and when I got home, my wife was in a panic because I'd stopped for a while, and she called Big Pat, and Big Pat came over, picked me up on Christmas Eve, ran me to Maidenhead meeting, you know, so I had a meeting here, and then ran me back home, and then he wanted to go home, and it was not, he had no petrol in his car, and it wasn't a day of 24 hours or Texaco's 24 hours. This was way back in 1979, 1980. So I had to sift the petrol from my car to put it to his car so he can get home for Christmas. And I still today find it amazing that man did that for me. You know, you talk about love and fellowship. That was fantastic. And but that's the man he was. And in our area, he's been dead 30 years, but he's rarely any meetings going back with our people don't remember Pat. He was special. But that's what's on offer in these rooms. There's people here who will help you with no clauses. No, I want something, don't want money, anything. And that's what you've got to find if you're new. I stayed and got cracking. I looked after the prisons. As the officer, and as going organising the meetings, and these were maximum prisons like Crendon, and it all went well. And I was sober just under 9 years, and because I was clean and sober and still good at my job, I was a director of a £300 million company, and I was doing very, very well. I had a flat in London because it was a very demanding job, and I remember one night that I was in my office working, and these three marketing girls came in. They were lovely, young, and they said, we're invited to a club opening in London tonight. Come with us. You're always working. Because I was just going to go back to my flat. And I said, oh, right, yeah, let's go. Because they wanted a driver. That was me. And so I drove them there. And I hadn't drank. I didn't want to drink. And then there's all champagne, all sorts going on. And the new owner was a rugby player. He played for England, but he was a big fat slob. And he came over, and he could see I wasn't drinking. And he kept saying, have a man's drink, have a man's drink. And he's drinking champagne. And I thought, no, go away. And anyway, he kept on, because I've realized afterwards that drinking men or drinking people like other people to drink so they don't look so bad. And that's what he was doing with me, because he couldn't stand this man standing there in a suit and with these pretty girls and all that. And it really got on my nerves. And you know what I did? I was stupid. I had one glass of champagne. Absolutely insanity. I didn't class it as a real drink. I thought it was a woman's drink. And anyway, I drank this one little glass of champagne, drove the girls home in the evening. They had a nice evening. But the thing was, that was the end for me, because my head said I got away with a drink. And the fact is, I didn't get away with a drink. And within 3 months, I drank again. I was drinking again all the way through that, because I thought I could get away with it. And I ended up going from a boardroom to the lunatic asylum at Stone. And I was crazy with a drink. I'd lost everything, my job, everything. And I had to start again. I had to find the courage to come back to AA. And I went back to my regular meeting, which was Beaconsfield, which is a very good meeting. And I was 2 stone overweight, bloated. I looked a mess. And I remember walking in there, and I thought all the people I knew, people who I'd sponsored, didn't like me anymore, moved away. And they didn't come over to say, Tony, welcome back. I was convinced of that, but it wasn't. It was rubbish, because the point was they were terrified, because they'd seen me strong in AA, doing all this service, and here I was in a mess, like an old man, all fat and a slob. And I had to start again. I had to find that courage to start one day at a time again. And I did. And can I tell you, it was easy? Rubbish. It was hard. It's always hard for newcomers because we've just been with the hit bucket and, you know, the easy way out. And here we were trying to stay sober again. And I'll be honest with you, it wasn't easy. It was hard. But what happened was Big Pat and Terry and Tom, who are very strong giant figures in our area, they took me to their flat and they sat me down and they said to me, Tony, you've got to deal with your childhood. Because what I'd done was, when I came to Beaconsfield, it was lovely. It was posh people like the church. It was lovely, you know, quite rich people. And there was nobody fighting and arguing, really. And there was big, you know, churches 500 years old, and some big graves outside, you know, real stone graves. And I decided when I came in, all my family, all my shit was in there. Didn't need it anymore. And I had been doing the steps, but I would do none of the steps where I start talking about, you know, making all the amends. I made plenty of easy amends, you know, the easy ones, going to your boss and one or two others, that's easy. But this was a biggie. This was a biggie. And I had a massive resentment against my dad. I remember when I was 15, I wanted to knife the bastard because he was creating havoc and it started on me and, you know, it was awful. But what I have to remember is this, is that his life had been buggered up by a war and all his youth had been spent. And here I was, a little puffy drunk, judging him. Anyway, they said, you've got to sort your dad out. So I went up to Newcastle to make amends. And I'm going to tell you, it's the hardest thing I've ever done. I didn't want to do it, but I did it. And I got to Newcastle and I rang Tom because there was no mobile phones then. And I said, well, you've got the bright idea how I do this. He said, start by ringing the doorbell or knocking the door. And I went in and my dad was there and I was expecting to see Rocky, you know, Rocky and Sugar Hill Realist. And yet there he was, a little old man in his 70s. And I went in and he was so pleased to see me. And he said, have a cup of tea, have a cup of sit down. I'm so pleased to see you. And I started to talk to him and he said, I said, I want to talk to you about my drinking, Dad. I want to talk about my drinking. I know I drank too much as a young man. He just said, no, you were fine, you were fine. I said, no, Dad, I want to talk because that night I left home, it was nasty and everything else. I found the courage to the fellowship to do it. And you know what? A lot of people said he should do it to me. But the thing is, it's a selfish program. I wanted to get well. He had to live rent-free in my head for years. And I had the courage to go and make amends to him. The meeting lasted 15 minutes because it says in step 9, you haven't got the right if it's too much for somebody. Because he was crying, I was crying. And for the first time in my life, my dad and I hugged each other. That never happened. Never happened. And I came out of that house and I went to my car and I cried for an hour. All that hate and poison and resentment was out. It was gone. It was the hardest thing I did, but it was the greatest thing I did. There's no resentments at all now that I know of in the world or people I owe apologies to. I've apologized to them all. And I'm lucky, you know, that's coming up to 39 years in a few weeks that, you know, I haven't drank and I've built a new life. You know, and I've talked to my brothers and sisters and I've told them what I was like. They knew what I was like when I was young. And I did that. And I got back into AA and I got very much involved. And I did 14 years altogether within the group, from all the different positions, treasurer for 4 years, and then vice chairman and chairman, did all of that. And I was very happy. And that's why I feel strongly what I said about Zoom, because I remember I had to propose putting meetings into a local paper and say there were AA meetings in Amersham here and Beaconsfield, and they all went ape shit. They were all had a riot, and they were all telling me step tradition 4 and all this. You can't do that. And I thought, well, do you think the press is going to come and take photographs of you? I mean, you're that famous, and it was tough, but I got it through. Now, if you look at that, it's nothing, and we've got this Zoom now. And I think, as I said earlier, this is a fantastic thing. We're talking to so many people now all over the world, and I've made new friends in America and everywhere. So that's great, and it has to be done. And you know, I'm very grateful. And as you know, I lost my wife. She had cancer, and I looked after her for 3 years, but then she died. Now I knew Mick the Ferret for 40 years, but I didn't really know him until the last 20, because we were very big groups and we had lots of friends. And Mick had his Maidenhead friends, and he always used to tell me his meetings were the spiritual temples. And I used to say, no, bollocks, this is the best meeting in Beaconsfield. So we had a lot of fun with that. But Mick had been through the mill with his wife from cancer, and he looked after her wonderfully well. And then when my wife was told she's terminal, he helped me. He carried me. He carried me when she was dying. And, you know, I found that very, very tough. But what I found in this fellowship is the people who I meet here, who are on the program and really want to continue, being well. And, you know, sometimes you're lucky, you get your family back, your wife, your husbands, you get your family back and you're forgiven. And that is wonderful as well. Sometimes that doesn't happen. So I understand that as well. But there's miracles here in this fellowship. There really are. I've seen people come in who were broken, drunks, terrible mess. And you know, if there were cars that had been taken, they wouldn't get in the scrapyard. They were so bad. And yet they've got well by the program a day at a time. And back on me, within a short period of time, they're my friends, and they're doing fantastic in this fellowship. And that's what it's about. So all I'll say to any newcomers here tonight, give it a try. It is hard at the beginning because you're used to being in the drink and you know, solving your solutions like I did. But if you can find the right people around and go up and talk to them, you know, I had 6 sponsors really. I had sponsors I could talk to about God. I had sponsors I could talk with about relationships and things. And then another chap who's a smashing bloke, and I used to talk business. And, you know, so all that wealth and the fellowship, and if you build up credit, you know, you meet these people and you get all this love for free. And it's fantastic. I'll just look at my little list here because I'm getting a bit senile. But I think I've covered all the things I wanted to cover. But all I want to say to you is this: seriously, am I all right? Time, Mick?
Yes. Yeah, you got a few minutes.
Right, that's good. Right. All I would say to anyone: I don't talk the talk. I do walk the walk, and I love coming to meetings. And I love helping people. I don't do a lot of service because I'm useless with these computers. You're getting it the wrong man, because I had a secretary and a PA before I retired. I didn't have email and all that. Oh, God bless it, wasn't for me. I'm silly, I know, but there we are. So I'm not very good at that, but I have done a lot of service, and I do a lot of service in my area. I help people who I feel need help, you know, and I'm careful because I've had 2 bad experiences being sponsors. And one of them was a lad called Richard. And he was a nice lad. It was a long time ago. It's 30 years ago now, but he was in his 30s. He came from a very, very well-to-do family. And Big Pat gave him to me. He said, Tony, look after this bloke and see if you can sponsor him and help him. I said, all right. And, you know, secretary of Beaconsfield. So I said, all right. And I remember coming home from work one night when I was helping Richard. And it was cold and the snow was, it was a terrible night. So I got in, I was glad to get in the warm. And then Richard rang and he says, oh, Tony, I can't make tonight to go to the one in Slough. He said, I'm going out to a church meeting with my wife. So I'll see you Thursday at Amersham. Well, it sounds good, doesn't it? Well, what I didn't know was I didn't hear from him on Thursday. He wasn't at the meeting. And I rang Friday, I rang Pat. And I said, oh, he's gone missing again, Richard. He says, oh, haven't you heard? I says, no. Oh, he died on Wednesday night. He went out. He didn't go to the church. He had told his wife he was going to a meeting with me and blah, blah, blah. He went out drinking that night, very cold night, passed out in the street, and he died. and he was a young man. He had everything in front of him, and it shook me so rigid, and it took me 5 years to get over that with Big Pat, because Pat had trusted me to take this lad on, and his family were significant. But that's alcoholism. And it happened again some years later. A young lad, Ben, and he'd come in, and he's a really nice lad, and I was helping him, and I went on holiday. I was going through the steps, and I went on holiday for 2 weeks with my wife, and it's before mobile phones. And when I go on holiday, I don't take any of that. This is my holiday, and I came back, and
Time, Tony.
I'm going to finish now. Yes, yeah, I'll just finish and just say, I came back from holiday, and I hadn't heard from Ben. I'm looking for Ben, and I'm told in a meeting he's dead and buried. He died the week I'd gone, and yet he was a lovely, lovely lad, and that shook me rigid. I'm going to finish it up, but all I'm going to say is this is a cunning and baffling disease, and I'm a miracle that I got back a second time round. You don't have to go out and drink again. You can stay here, and there's times when things ain't good, and sometimes, you know, Christmas this year I was very ill, and as you know, I had 2 cancers, different types, and I'm through it, and I'm back to, you know, being normal again, which God help. But I mean, this is down to AA, because I've grown up, I've learned in AA, and it's given me so much, and it's a miracle for me. I've had a miracle. I've had a good life, and I've got you all as my friend. So thank you very much. See you shortly. Ta-ra.
Thank you, Tony. Thank you for sharing your experiences with us. Yeah, I worked in a brewery for 40 years, you know, 13 drinking, 27 in recovery. Yeah, I don't like this. You're getting all these hearts flashing up from these women. Yeah, that's not right.
Oh.
Unless it's for me. It might be for me. God bless you, Tony. You know, we've known each other a long time, and we've helped each other. And that's what I love about this fellowship. It doesn't matter what happens to us in this fellowship. There's always someone there that's had it happen to them, and they share with us. Thank you, Tony. Right.